I've seen several recruitment businesses, some of them really high profile recruitment businesses that have, and some of them have gone through this process and no one knows, or outwardly, like people aren't aware of it, but they've liquidated or they've gone through the insolvency process and then they still exist.
Yes.
Welcome to Amplifying Recruitment. It was reported in 2024 that 18% of UK recruitment businesses stopped trading. In today's episode, I'm joined by Chris Worden. He's going to share why this is happening, how this has happened, and what you can do to protect your business to stop that from happening. Chris, welcome to Amplifying Recruitment. If someone has just clicked on this and they're thinking, actually, my recruitment business is okay, why should they still listen to the conversation we're about to have?
Good question. Thanks for inviting me. So I've worked with a number of recruitment businesses over the years, and from what I understand, it can be quite hard to plan cash flow when you're looking, in the future. Are people going to turn up? Placements? Are you going to get paid for placements? Are businesses' budgets going to be cut? Are there going to be too many placements in the market, reducing your revenues? So although things might be great today, I think it's really important as a business owner to understand how you navigate challenges with cash flow difficulties, challenges with creditor pressure, because even strong businesses have cash flow difficulties. And if you don't manage them, see them quickly, that can lead to perhaps picking the phone up to somebody like me. So if you're a business owner, I think understanding restructuring, insolvency, getting out of cash flow problems is critical, because it might not be raining today, but we don't know what's going to happen in the future.
Yeah, and I think the last 4 or 5 years have definitely taught us that, right?
Yeah.
So back to a question that I suppose I would normally ask first is, like, who are you and what do you do? Like, what would you give as a quick intro to you?
Okay, my name is Chris Worden. I'm the Managing Director of Director First Insolvency. We are one of the leading independent insolvency advisories for directors in the UK. And what we do is we help a director understand what are the options that they have available to them. But more importantly, and quite uniquely, our advice is tailored on helping them make better decisions. Lots of insolvencies can come with problems post-appointment because a director doesn't really understand, other than they perhaps need to go into liquidation or administration, what are the potential ramifications of making such a decision. So our advice is not just, okay, where are you at? Where do you want to be? How do we get you from A to B legally? But are there any potential pitfalls to you personally should you have to make the decision to go into insolvency?
Okay. And this conversation came about because you found yourself dealing with more and more recruitment businesses over the last 4 or 5 years. Before we go into, like, the insolvency bit and liquidation, what's the things that lead to that? How do people get to that point where they're like, shit, we need to pick up the phone to Chris, or you get an introduction made to you?
So there are many different routes to actually picking the phone up to me. What I found most common is cash flow difficulties. Let's say in COVID, there was a lot of support, be it bounce back loans, C-bills. After the fact, there was these recovery loans. There was a lot of opportunity in 2020, 2021, 2022 across many sectors. And I found that a lot of businesses borrowed in those times, likes of Funding Circle, iWalker, Capital on Tap, Fleximize, all these different types of lenders. Now, what's happened is revenues have started to slow down. Sentiment has changed in the market. And these fixed costs are still there. And that's a recipe for disaster. People are getting behind with the VAT, with the PAYE, with the corporation tax. They're struggling to make payments on the C-bills and their RLS. And I say it all the time, there's too much month at the end of the money. Now, the key thing is to take advice really, really early. As soon as you become insolvent, for people that don't understand, there's a test. Can you pay your debts on as in when they fall due? Are your liabilities more than your assets? Or, in the most serious of cases, has someone taken legal action against you? Have you been given a CCJ? Is there a stat demand? Is there a winding up petition in the post? So they're the main reasons why somebody would pick the phone up to me.
And what's normally the starting point for that? So I assume they're all different, right? But what are the common themes? Where is it that there's, and I like that saying, there's too much month left at the end of the money? Is that what people are saying to you? Or when they pick up the phone, like what's the reason I'm calling you today, Chris, is this?
Yeah, I'll tell you the common one for recruitment. Chris, I've got an issue at the moment. I've not paid VAT for X long. I've not paid corporation tax for X long. I've got issues with my factoring. The market has just slowed down. I've got a funding circle loan. I've got a C-bills loan that I'm struggling to pay. And here's the big one for most recruitment company directors. I have something called an overdrawn director's loan account. And they've normally found me from an introduction from an accountant or maybe on some of the content I do online. I do a lot on YouTube, TikTok and LinkedIn. And they'll go, Chris, I've tried to fight this off. I've not wanted to pick the phone up to you because people see us as the Grim Reaper. What are my options and what can I do now? And at that point, they're stressed. It's like really, really, Rome's burning. They don't know where to turn.
Okay. And if someone's listening to this now and they're like, that's me, or that's about to be me, or some of that feels like it's very true in my world, what are the things that they can do right now? I suppose, like, what are the steps they could take before they pick up the phone to you, or what could that person have done before it got to that point?
So I think that the minute that you're having cash flow difficulties, you've got to try and understand why. What's the problem here? Is it a lack of revenue? Is it we're getting leads in, but we're not converting the leads? Or is it because I've got too many fixed costs? Am I carrying too many staff? You've got to look at that P&L and go, right, what's the problem here? And then you've got to start if somebody doesn't want to pick the phone up, and my advice is the minute you're having cash flow difficulties, is pick the phone up. We get about 700-800 inquiries a month. We don't do 700 or 800 insolvencies a month, thankfully. And sometimes it's just some advisory of what they should do and what they shouldn't do. But probably the big one is HMRC. People are frightened to death of HMRC, and it's strange because HMRC you won't hear anything off them. It's too easy to miss a VAT quarter. Dare I say it's too easy to miss 2 VAT quarters. And I don't think a director intentionally goes out there to rack up huge HMRC arrears, because we're taught to be positive, aren't we? And take risks as an entrepreneur. And maybe that first VAT quarter, I don't know, they owe 30 grand on a VAT quarter, but they know that they have some placements coming down the line. And they've got other people screaming at them, right, okay, well, I'm not going to pay that VAT quarter. And then it comes to the next VAT quarter, and they've already took the decision not to pay the first one. So it's an easier decision for them to make. And as you know, some of those placements might not have dropped. Some of the revenues haven't come in. And then before they know it, HMRC are really squeezing them tight. Because once you start missing 2 VAT quarters and you're coming up to a third, and you might have unpaid PAYE, you might have unpaid corporation tax from last year, the revenue will do a number of things. They'll write to you, they'll phone you. Sadly, a lot of directors are too scared to talk to them, and they'll bury their head in the sand. But if it doesn't get dealt, if you don't speak to them, the next thing there'll be some type of enforcement agent at the door. And what they're looking to do there is take control of goods. And just imagine most recruitment firms, they don't have a lot by way of assets, physical assets, but they might have a load of tables, chairs and computers and just coffee machines. Now, if HMRC come in, and they don't do this straight away, but if they come in with a clipboard and they basically list everything that's in your office, that is then owned by HMRC. They might not take it on that day, but if you do not pay your arrears in a set timescale, they will come and they will take it out your business. And it's quite hard to run a recruitment business with no laptops, computers, desks, or tables. So that's problem one. Problem two is they could wind you up. They could petition to wind the business up. And again, this doesn't happen overnight, Jamie. It's a case of they're trying to get the money in. Director buries the head in the sand, and something called a winding up petition gets served. And when that lands on your desk, you have a few weeks before it gets advertised. At the point of advertising, the bank account's frozen, makes it very difficult to trade. You get a court date. If you don't pay up what's owed on the court date, your business is wound up forcibly. First thing that they're going to accuse you of is you've not behaved responsibly as a director. So what should you do? Pick the bloody phone up to them.
And what do you, and I think you're right what you said there, people get scared of HMRC. And I've had this myself, where I've actually had an outstanding debt to HMRC and not realised, like ignorance on my part, but you said there they're not immediately going 7 days later, where's that money, that some of your other creditors might do. Your CRM provider might be going, listen, you've missed a payment here, and they're on the phone to you. HMRC don't do that, which is how I ended up with like a really spiteful letter and going, oh my God, like where did this come from? Mm-hmm. So maybe some of that is I don't know, lack of administration, whatever it is. What should you say when you pick up the phone to them?
I think before you pick up the phone to them, you need to understand what your play is here. And this is really important. Are you past the point of no return? And all that means is can you get out of this hole? And it comes back to like having accurate financial information. And I think that's what a lot of businesses lack. They don't have monthly management accounts. They don't have a 13-week rolling cash flow. They don't really know where they're at in the business. Now, if you have got that information, you can make better decisions and you can say, right, okay, I understand I'm 50, 100 grand behind and I need 18 months to clear it based on these cash flow projections. And you'd pick the phone up to them. Now, doing that, you stand out because so many people don't. The person at the end of the phone are just like me and you. They're just doing their job. Now, sentiment has changed with HMRC. I think they're getting fed up and that there's been some type of direction from above to get more money in. But there is a thing called a time to pay arrangement. People, it's not an insolvency process. It allows you to speak to HMRC and agree to pay your HMRC arrears, be it VAT, corporation tax, PAYE, combination of all three, over an extended period of time. There will be some interest. You've probably accrued some penalties. Now, anyone listening to this, unless you've done something seriously wrong, okay, will get 12 months. On the basis that you keep up to with your current. So let's say we do a 100 grand time to pay arrangement with VAT, corporation tax. Your next VAT bill is due 7th of next month. If you get that time to pay arrangement agreed today, over 12 months, you have to pay that next VAT bill on time and in full. Because if you don't, it breaches the time to pay arrangement and it's cancelled. Equally, if you don't make a payment on your time to pay arrangement, it gets breached, cancelled, and they're on your door. And it's a case of you've failed once, we're not going to give you another bullet.
Okay. So just back to the question then. So I pick up the phone to HMRC and I need to know whether I'm beyond the point of no return, as you put it. And if I am before the point of no return, I'd say to them, I'd like to set up a
time to pay arrangement. I think you should be going in there at 3 years. Okay.
Okay. So, so this is a negotiation.
Always. Yeah.
Yeah.
You'll get, I think the days of 3 year time to pay arrangements are probably gone. but obviously cash is king in your business. So I would go in there and ask for 36 months and be prepared to be knocked down.
Does the amount of the debt obviously has an impact on that? If it is because the first number you said is it's 30 grand. 30 grand, do I want to be paying that over 3 years? Probably not. But if it's 130 grand, maybe having that in my business over 3 years would be beneficial.
For me, it's down to your numbers. It seems to be quite hard to predict cash flow in recruitment businesses because of the model. From what from the experience that I've had with these companies. So I'd always, listen, it's brutal out there. I mean, we're recording this in end of March 2025. I haven't got a crystal ball, but I don't think there's much good news happening at the moment from what I can see, from what I can read. So to have that cash in your business, for me, would be really, really important. So try and push this as far as you can. Be prepared that they're going to want it in 12 months. They might ask you to pay it in 3, 6 or 9 months. And if you can do, and it's water off a duck's back, by all means do that. But what does frustrate me a little bit is HMRC asking for money, okay? The director being frightened and agreeing to pay that money in a shorter period of time. And it's a time to pay arrangement that's destined to fail. And then they've agreed to a payment plan because they've not really took proper advice. The payment plan fails and they end up getting wound up. I mean, my shout, listen, if you're behind with HMRC, we offer free advice around it. Like go to my YouTube channel, go and watch the videos. I don't want any money. We used to do time to pay arrangements and we charge people for it. And then we realised how many hours we were spending on HMRC and worked back the numbers, and we just thought this is a waste of time. We'll tell you how to do it free.
Yeah.
But you've got to understand your numbers. You've got to push it as far as you can, I think. And then you've got to make sure that you pay them and keep up with your current.
So there's another piece in there, then, I suppose, is that if HMRC will accept that, okay, yeah, we'll put you on a 3, 6, 9, 12 month time to pay agreement. But actually, it's, as you said, it's destined to fail. And they're just trying to claw back what they can before that you eventually wind up or go out of business anyway.
I don't think it's that. I don't think they're out there, with that type of intent. I think it's because the director doesn't understand. I don't think the director understands their numbers. Because if you knew your numbers, you had accurate financial reporting, you had that cash flow forecast, you would never agree to something that you're not going to be able to repay. But a director's on the phone to them, they're a bit like a rabbit in the headlights. Yeah, I'll agree to that, because they just want the pain. They just want the pain to go away, temporary. And it's going to fail. So if you know your numbers, you'll know what you need to ask for. You'll know how long it's going to take you to get this paid off by.
Okay. All right. That's really, that in itself is really interesting. And having looked at some of your content on YouTube, there's a ton of value on there. You mentioned something a little bit earlier on. You said about factoring companies. So when we were talking about some of the problems that, or some of the challenges recruitment businesses have, some of the things that people say earlier on the phone call, one of them was factoring companies. Where do they come into all of this?
So some businesses will use factoring to improve cash flow. So they might be on 90-day terms. They will sign up with a factoring company and they will be able to draw that money down immediately after invoice. But, not all factoring companies are created equally. I mean, there was a horror story that I dealt with recently. And this guy, he was desperate for money, and that's the problem at Christmas time. And he's looking at insolvency, and there is a factoring company with a charge. Okay, it's a debenture on company's house, which means in an insolvency, they actually call the shots. And a lot of these firms will appoint an insolvency practitioner of their choosing, which is absolutely their right to. But it's important as a director, you control that process. I'm going to answer your point, but I do want to make this point also. Insolvency is quite strange. You go out there and you are allowed to appoint an insolvency practitioner. What people don't understand is an insolvency practitioner is duty bound to represent the creditors. So they're on behalf of HMRC, the bank, suppliers, etc. Now that's strange when you think if you want an accountant, you want an accountant to represent you. You want a solicitor to represent you. This is the total opposite. You're going out there to get someone to represent the other side. Now, there are some fantastic insolvency practitioners out there that give really good pre-appointment advice, but people need to understand that. And you've got to go out there and choose the right one for you, one that's going to give you time, going to give you attention, help you understand your problems, all of them, and give you a way forward. Now, if your factoring company chooses a larger firm, which it generally is, they perhaps haven't got the same bad side manner as somebody that you've gone out to find. So back to the original question, what's the problem with factoring companies? So we've looked at this chap's business, and he thought he'd signed a 3-month agreement with his factoring company. So we've looked at it, we've reviewed the agreement, and we're like, listen, you're in something called an evergreen contract, which are really frowned upon. I don't know if they've been outlawed, but like you shouldn't. It essentially says you're in it for 18 months, okay? You can only cancel it on one specific day, right? So you just never get out the bloody thing. And if you do cancel it, we told it was like 25 grand to get out of the contract. And I'm like, have you not taken any advice on this? And he hadn't. And he says, well, I'll be able to get out of it because I've not taken the advice. And that really isn't the case. Not with business to business. You're a director. You're responsible for seeing whether this contract's any good or not. And I says, what on earth did you do this for? He said, it was a week before Christmas and I needed the money to pay people. Factoring wasn't his right option. He really, all he did is he kicked the can down the line, and it's not going to end great for this guy because the factoring company are like, they're not nice, this specific one. I'm not going to mention any names. So it's a really handy tool, factoring, if you know your numbers. You factor it into your numbers, you read the bloody contract.
So you're not saying don't use a factoring company, because I think they're an essential part.
Yeah, not at all.
Right?
Yeah, you use the right one. Make sure you're checking it regularly. Are there better deals out there? And be mindful that in an insolvency scenario, that relationship with the factoring company has to be managed really carefully.
Okay, so before we go into the insolvency process, I suppose, thinking about warning signs, some of the things you've said there are about like picking up the phone to HMRC, knowing your numbers, like your cash flow numbers, being aware of what you're signing. Is there anything else that people should be aware of or thinking about?
A basic tip for people, because like 99% of cases I deal with have HMRC arrears. Again, that corporation tax, PAYE. You've got to separate HMRC's money. And the easiest way I'll tell you how I do it in my business. I use Starling. Okay, they're not for everybody. I find it really easy. And you can open these things called spaces dead simply. And I have a space for VAT. I have a space for corporation tax. I don't have a space for PAYE actually, but that just gets paid at the end of every month. What happens is when that £1,000, we'll take £1,000 plus VAT, and please take your own advice on an accountant here, right? What the percentages I put in probably aren't right for everybody. I just like to have more than enough money in those accounts, so when it comes to pay, I see it as a little bonus in my head that we can put back in the cash flow. So that £1,000 plus VAT, 1,200 quid. I put 200 quid in the VAT account. I put another 150 quid in the corporation tax. Just put it down because I was putting in too much. So I'm left with 850 quid to play with. Now, if I do that, I should never ever get behind with HMRC, because I've got more than enough in the VAT account, and every 3 months they're going to send me I remember the last VAT bill we had, I'd stashed away about 12 grand more than I needed. So I was able to put that back into the cash flow. And I get it, not everyone's going to be in that position. But again, that is why it's important that you're working with probably a bookkeeper, okay, or a FD, or your accountant probably isn't being paid to give this level of detail to you. If your accountant just does your year-end accounts and files like the statutory stuff, it is about as much use as a chocolate tea cozy to most directors to make decisions on their business. So that's one tip. Make sure that you're putting away HMRC's money.
If your revenue isn't where it should be, it's time to change how your team sells. We've just released the next dates for our flagship business development training, Turn Farmers into Hunters. This is a live in-person training in London where you'll walk away with proven frameworks, ready to use client engagement funnels and conversion skills that you can apply immediately. All the info and sign up details are in the link in the comments. Okay. So then we move to this point. If we get to the point of no return, of actually, the business is in a bad spot, we owe too much money. So I'm going to ask this question a little bit differently. I've seen this year and tail end of last year. I've seen several recruitment businesses, some of them really high profile recruitment businesses that have, and some of them have gone through this process and no one knows, or outwardly, like people aren't aware of it, but they've liquidated or they've gone through the insolvency process and then they still exist.
Yes.
How does that, so it's ABC recruitment and we've racked up a ton of debt, we can't operate anymore, so we close, and then the following day they open again and they're called ABC Recruitment Mark II, really, really similar, or sometimes even the same name, and they're operating again. How does that work?
There are two routes. And what we're talking about here is something called a pre-pack. And the most common route is a pre-pack administration. And that's where businesses become insolvent. But in amongst this business, there is a viable business model. If they shed the legacy debt, this business can be profitable again. And an administration is when you appoint an administrator, a wall of protection will go around your business while you're in administration. Legal action will cease to exist. They won't be able to take legal action. And what a director will do is they have their business valued independently, and they make an offer to the administrator to buy that business back out of admin. And in most cases, a business in this scenario is worth a lot less than a director thinks it's worth. Because by its very nature, it's insolvent. There's something not working. And the process is you appoint an administrator. Well, you go and find an administrator first of all. You have a chat with them. Agents values the business. Then there is a marketing period where that agent will market this business to a list. It's not like people get really worried that if I go into administration, someone's going to buy my business from underneath my nose. It doesn't happen. I've been doing this years and years. People do not buy businesses on 10 days due diligence, which means once the marketing period's over, the director submits their bid to the agent. It's normally on terms. I'll give you an example of a recruitment business I've done recently. They're probably £1.5 million worth of debt, and they've bought the business back for £55,000 on deferred terms over 9 months. Once the sale is accepted by the agent, it's handed over to the solicitor for the sale and purchase agreement to be drawn up. That sale concludes just before that business then goes into administration, and then the administrator carries out all their duties as an administrator to take a look at what's gone on, investigate the conduct of the directors, and to bring some money into the pot to repay some of the creditors. But if you can imagine that particular case I talked about, there's £55,000 is the consideration bought for the business. On top of that, there are 2 directors' loan accounts that we do need to talk about that are being settled at 30,000 each. So there's probably about 110,000 coming into the pot. There'll be administrators' costs to take off that. But this business had £1.5 million worth of debt. So you can see that the creditors have taken a huge haircut. If you do an administration, they can buy the trading style. So like you say, a business has just started, they have exactly the same name. In an administration, you're buying that trading style. The other process that we're talking that could have happened is a liquidation. Administration is really rescuing a business. You're saving jobs, you're transferring all the staff over. A liquidation is more of a full stop. Business has become insolvent. There's no real way forward, but there may be some assets in that business that could be viable, and that could generally be database. It could be some contracts, some perms, permanent appointments. And what they do is they have evaluations still done before they appoint that liquidator, and the agent will say, well, this business is worth in situ. What they believe it's worth to the directors is worth 50 grand. Ex situ, though, this business is worth very little. In recruitment, it's not, is it? It's like what we're going to get. What is an agent going to get at auction for your business? Tables and chairs. So what that business owner, the emphasis is they're going to sell their business before they appoint that liquidator, but it's going to be scrutinised by the liquidator on appointment. So the reason why it's important to have an independent agent's valuation done is when you do get scrutinised, you can say to the liquidator, well, actually, I have bought this business for closer to the in situ value. Therefore, I've paid market value. But in a liquidation, if you are going to use the same or similar name, you have to be really, really careful. There's a thing called Section 216, Prohibited Names Act. And if you liquidate a business, you as a director cannot have the same or similar name for a period of 5 years. Unless, one, you apply to the court. It can be quite costly. Number 2, you already have a trading business that's been trading over 12 months with the same or similar name. So I'm liquidating Chris Worden Recruitment, but Chris Worden Mark II Recruitment Limited has been trading for over 12 months. Therefore, I'm not going to get my collar felt off the insolvency service. The most common way, though, is to buy the trading style off the liquidator. Now, most recruitment companies, aside from Indeed and Reed, etc., their trading style is worthless to anyone else. It only has a little bit of value to them. So they may pay a £500, £1,000 to liquidator, and then they have 30 days to advertise the fact that they've bought the name in something called the London Gazette, and they have to write to the creditors of the company to tell them that they've bought the name. And if you do that, you can use a similar name in your version 2.
Okay. So, like, immediately for me, like, listening to all of this, my thing would be like, go to someone that knows what they're doing and seek advice of this straight away. With the first example that you gave, the pre-pack, the administration, you mentioned PGs, like personal guarantees there. How does that bit play out?
This is a huge problem.
And by that, I mean, like, if I'm the recruitment business owner, I've put my house as like some sort of... Most
people won't initially put the house up, Jamie. What they'll do is they'll sign a personal guarantee. What a personal guarantee is a piece of paper saying, in the event that the business defaults, I'm going to make the business right. And you'll find them mostly on overdrafts, credit cards, loans from the likes of Funding Circle, iWalker, Capital on Tap. Like, you have signed PGs with these companies. And what happens is, when a business goes into insolvency, the company that you've signed the PG will serve notice on you within 7 days saying, I want all this money back, which will scare the life out of most people. And again, much like you need a plan with insolvency, you need a plan with PGs. Now, the good news is in 99% of cases, the lender will entertain your proposals for a repayment. I've got a podcast dropping in a couple of weeks about this. Please go and watch it, right? But to sum it up for you, the lender just wants the money back. You'll pick the phone up to them, and there's two things you can do, depending on who the lender is. Let's talk about overdrafts, because they're easy to deal with. Banks are easy to deal with. Although you're a business, banks got hammered, didn't they, for how they treat people in previous years, so that they're fairly light touch, and they'll entertain any type of proposal. You could pay an overdraft over 10 years, they'll stop the interest, and it won't affect your credit score, okay?
There's a hell of a lot of negotiation goes on through this process, isn't there? Far more, I think, than certainly I was aware of.
Well, people just think I'm going to end up in a skip. That's the problem, isn't it? And the other one is, though, instead of restructuring the loan over a long period of time, and again, this depends on your personal situation. If you've got £1 million house with no mortgage, this option is not for you, okay? But let's say you're just the average Joe with a house, a mortgage, or in rented accommodation. You've got other credit card debt, loans, etc. You're not flush. You might go to that bank and get some cash together and offer a full and final. So a recent one I'm aware of, he owed 50 grand on a PG with an overdraft. He settled it for 4,700 quid full and final.
And is that just as straightforward as, or not straightforward, but as simple maybe, as going to the bank and saying, well, I haven't got 50 grand. What I can do is pull together some money here, a bit in savings. I can give you 4.5 grand. And
yeah.
They went, yeah, we'll take that.
We'll take it. Again, there are people out there that will give you advice on this. It's not something I get involved with because I'm on the insolvency side, but I've worked with a guy called Gary Whitehead for years and years. Very good. He charges people based on what they want him to do. But yeah, but you can do it yourself as well. But it's like everything. I can go and try and plaster my wall at home. And I'm going to get a different outcome to if I pay a little bit more and get a plasterer to do it. Now, that's the high street banks. A lot of people have signed PGs with other types of lenders, so challenger lenders, Funding Circle, iWalker, Capital on Tap, Fleximize, etc., etc. Some of these will not entertain a full and final settlement. But what they all will entertain is your proposals for repayment, and you'll be able to extend your repayments over a longer period of time, okay? That could be a year, could be 2 years, could be 3 years, could be 5 years. You should be able to cap the interest or even stop the interest. And as long as you're talking to them, and you might be like, if you're Phoenix in a business, you're doing some type of pre-pack, the first 6 months of any business is critical. Cash flow is normally tight. So you may even say to them, listen, I can pay you a very token payment for 6 months, and then we'll reassess it and we'll step it up. And you sadly, if you've paid a PG though, the chances are you're going to have to pay it back. It's just how you pay it back. Do you offer a full and final settlement? Do you pay it over a period of time? Don't be scared. There are options out there for you. You've got, like anything, you've got to get educated on what you can and what you can't do.
I think there's a common theme here, isn't there, of getting educated about what you can and can't do, and then actually speaking to people rather than trying to run away from it or bury your head in the sand.
I think just people, it's like that acceptance, isn't it? It's like, oh God, I have to pick up the phone to somebody now. I'm signing my own death warrant. It's not like that. It's like literally the number one thing that people say to us, because we, I don't know if you've seen our YouTube channel, this isn't for everyone, but when we took someone through a process, we interview the really brave ones. And the one thing that's the same is, we wish we'd have spoken to you sooner. And these people who just take some advisory from us, we don't charge them, they don't end up in insolvency. This is we do this day in, day out. You know, what might be a huge problem for you, a big grey cloud, Like for us, it's not an issue. It's just, right, we'll do this, do that, do the other. When you're struggling with debt, your brain is not focused on what it should be focusing on, which is running your business and pushing the business forward. You're fighting fires. You're emotionally burnt out. Utilize the services out there for people. A lot of people in insolvency will give you some free advice. Okay, we will, definitely, and you will sleep better that night. In 99% of cases.
Yeah. Okay. So something I was thinking about as you were going through this is the, and again, I go back to those examples that I can think of that people listening to this, watching this, or maybe know about some of the examples of companies that have phoenixed, as you called it. Are there any, or what are the challenges maybe, either operationally or reputationally for those companies where they've gone through that? Mm-hmm. What are the challenges the other side?
Okay, well, let's talk about operationally. There's a number of considerations that you need. If you are going to move all your staff over, you need to get some employment specialist advice. What you can't start doing is using an insolvency to make some redundant and keep some on for the new company. Either you make them all redundant and you take specialist employment law advice. It's not my area of expertise. I know a little. Or you move everyone over via 2P. Okay. Do not make the mistake of getting rid of some people and taking the rest over, because those that have been got rid of, if you excuse my grammar, they have got claims to file an unfair dismissal case against the new company, which is going to cause you problems. And then you've got the normal, things like new banking. You're going to be sending out invoices in new names. You're going to have that conversation with your clients. And it's really how you explain this to clients. If you don't owe them money, you don't really need to go into great detail as to what's happening. You may explain that listen, this is a restructure. We need you to pay this company. Obviously, insolvencies are higher now than they have in the past 20 years. It's pretty brutal out there. You're going to have to manage the factoring company. The factoring companies need to know that they're going to get paid out. If they think at any point that they're not going to get paid out, they will pull the shutters down. It's going to cause you some serious cash flow difficulties in your own business. Again, you can't do this yourself. You've got to take advice. And I would say, obviously, lease obligations. If you're in an office and you want to remain in that office, there may be a new lease that needs to be drawn up. There could be an assignability clause. If you're selling the business and you're not going through an administration, you're doing it on a liquidation. So you're essentially having your assets valued and you're selling them to your new company. You've got to make sure that paperwork's in order. Get an independent valuation done. Keep the insolvency practitioner aware of what's going on. Even though you've not appointed them yet, tell them what you're planning on doing. And you will need to raise an invoice from insolvent company to purchaser, and then it's been sold on an invoice basis. And again, it's just things like your CRM, your, the other various pieces of software that you need. You need to look into that. And is it a case of just changing the bank account that pays it, or are you going to need an absolutely new contract? And I think that's probably about it operationally.
A lot of that goes back to the same thing again of picking up the phone and actually speaking to people and having a conversation and saying what's happening and what we're doing. One of the things you mentioned there about the clients and saying to them, well, don't pay that bank account anymore. We've got a new bank account now, restructure, pay this one. Let
me dive into there. You can't do that. If old company, insolvent company has carried out work, okay, that is the property of that insolvent business. And what will happen is that, let's say that there is a debtor's ledger due in, the insolvency practitioner or administrator, it's their that money still needs to come in, but it needs to come into the estate. It needs to come into the insolvency practitioner's client account to be distributed to creditors. If you was to do that, and I'm sorry that come across in that way, That's called misfeasance. It's basically you're acting inappropriately as a director. So you can't just shift money owed into your new company. It's got to come into the liquidator or administrator. What you can do, though, is potentially you could be paid to help the liquidator or administrator collect that debt in, okay? Depending on how tough it is to collect in. What I was talking to you about is obviously there'll come a date where you stop trading in insolvent co, and the day after you'll be trading in new co. At that point, obviously you need to make sure that your clients are aware that the appointments you are giving them from this point are in this new co.
Okay, so I think that's maybe where the operationally and reputationally thing can maybe they overlap. Is that if I've got, I'm just thinking in my own head, if we're a heavy temps like contract business and we've got 10 contractors in this company here, and I say to them, hey, Mr. Client, Mrs. Client, keep paying up until Friday the 31st, but from Monday the 3rd, I need you to pay all of our invoices for all of those temp runners that we've got in, pay that into this new bank account. And does that start to spark conversations and like, why are you doing that? Is there the reputational bit in there?
Well, maybe, but you can always comfort your client that you've bought this and you've paid a fair market value. Obviously, you can talk to the insolvency practitioner that's appointed. You will have an invoice or a sale and purchase agreement. And of course, reputationally, some people might not like it. But this is not your first port. If you're doing this, you've got no bloody options left.
Yeah.
So there may be some damage. In my experience, if you're doing a good job and your clients are happy with the job that you're doing, there should be no issues. People are always going to be like, well, they've done this and they've done that. It's generally people who don't understand what you've been going through. This is a tool that is used by business owners, and it's a tool of last resort. And if it's used in the right manner, it can be very effective to give you a fresh start. You've got to learn the lessons. Do you know what I mean? There's no point doing this every time. You can't keep doing this. There are some serious repercussions for repeat offenders. But let's look at what's happened these last 5 years. We had a pandemic that no one saw coming. Business stopped for 18 months. Cost of living crisis. The economy's been tanking. It's been really, regardless of what they're saying in the press, it's bloody hard out there at the moment. People have got less money in the pockets. The vast majority of my clients are where they're at through no fault of their own. It's circumstances. And when you've got to remember is, let's take it back to the director. They'll have families, mouths to feed. You've got to do what's right. Not just by you, but by your creditors as well. Because you can't keep going on and racking up more debt. Again, that's another misfeasance claim. It's wrongful trading insolvently. The minute that you realise you cannot pay your creditors on time and you pass that point of no return, you've got to take some advice. And the Insolvency Act's there to protect you and also creditors.
Chris, it's been so insightful. Is there anything else that people should know? Anything else that we've missed in the conversation?
There's one thing, right? Overdrawn directors' loan accounts. These things will blow your legs off, okay? And people do not understand what they are. They don't understand what the problems are with them. And the big issue, my gripe in my industry, is most people don't tell you about them. Because I'll tell you not the typical director, because hopefully a lot of them watch my content. But a red flag to me is someone who rings up our office and goes, I want to know the cost to liquidate. And we try and fact find. We try and find out what's going on. No, I'm not interested. I just want to know what the cost to liquidate is. And we'll just say, listen, we're not a good fit for you. We're really not. Yeah, we'll get rid of them. Because the cost to liquidate is, let's say, £5,000 plus VAT, okay? So for a small company, it can go a lot higher. But that isn't all the cost. There's these things called directors' loan accounts, and essentially it's a ledger on your company balance of money coming in from the director. Let's say you put 20 grand into the company. That's a credit on your director's loan account. But most directors are told, me included, I take about £1,047 a month salary. I know that because I've totaled up what I've took this last financial year this morning. And I top it up with something called what everyone calls a dividend. But it's not a dividend at this stage. I take it as a drawing in anticipation that I've made a profit at the end of the year and I can declare a dividend. Okay?
Yep.
And that is absolutely the best way for you to take money out of your company as a limited company director if your company is profitable, right? If you've not paid last year's corporation tax, you're insolvent. You might be on a time to pay arrangement, okay? If you can't pay people at the end of the month, you're robbing Peter to pay Paul, you're insolvent, which means you're not going to make a profit, so you're not going to be able to declare a dividend. So I'll do the again. I've got to keep things simple, mate. Someone takes £4,000 a month. They're insolvent. They don't have any management information, so they don't know they're insolvent. They've just got their books from last year that, again, are no use to them. They're just a snapshot of your company sometime in the past. And they're taking £1,000 a month salary, and they're taking £3,000 a month in their head as a dividend. And then they come to liquidation. And I'll tell you what an unscrupulous firm does. They go, Mr. Unscrupulous Firm, how much is it to liquidate? It's £5,000 plus VAT. Brilliant. Will that be all my problems gone? Yes, you'll be in liquidation. They pay the £5,000 plus VAT, and then the liquidator gets appointed, and 3 weeks later, they write to them going, and by the way, this is a good scenario. There are much worse ones. You owe us 36 grand on an overdrawn loan account. When you're going to pay it back? And the director falls off the chair. And what 36 grand's made up of is the £3,000 a month they've been taking as a dividend, but they've not been profitable. So it's been transferred from, it's called an illegal dividend. You're not going to go to prison, but it gets transferred to a director's loan account, and that liquidator is going to ask you to pay it back. And that's their job. I'm not, they're not doing anything wrong here. I don't like how they do it, because on day one with me or my team, we'll look at your accounts. They're about much use as a chocolate tea cozy. And we'll say, listen, 12 months ago, you owed the company money, right? How have you paid yourself since? Combination of salary and dividends. Right. Okay. Have you got any management information? Right. Send me a balance sheet. Balance sheet will have a running total of what that director's loan account starts at. If they've not got a balance sheet, we need to do a transactional analysis of their bank from their last set of accounts to work out how much they've taken out of the business. Take off what they've paid salary. You're allowed to take salary even though you're insolvent. And you're left with a figure on a director's loan account. Now, the first thing is helping you understand what that figure is, okay? We don't want any money at this stage, right? Let's understand the scale of the problem. And once we understand what your director's loan account is, the next thing is, well, what are your proposals for repayment? Most directors can't afford to repay it back because they're skint personally, because the business is on its arse. And this is where it gets difficult. If you've got equity in your property and you have some personal wealth, you've got problems. If you're in rented accommodation with very little income and expenditure, it can be written off, or you'll make a small repayment back. Because an insolvency practitioner's job is to try and recover that money in for creditors, but they need to recover it in an efficient and costly manner. So they're not going to start spending 20, 30 grand in legal costs pursuing a director that hasn't got a pot to piss in or a window to throw it out of, okay? Now some firms are ruthless with them directors, right? But you need to, even if you don't like me, just understand this bit, right? Then you've got the guy in the £1 million pad with no mortgage. He's in trouble because if he doesn't pay back the director's loan, the insolvency practitioner will go, well, okay, I'll sue you. And there might be 50 grand's worth of costs, but we'll bankrupt you. Now, somebody with £1 million net worth is not going to get bankrupted over 50 grand, okay? So in that scenario, you'll get time to pay that director's loan account. Most people have a house. They might have some buy-to-lets. They have some equity. They've also got a partner. They might have some credit card debt. They might have some loans. And most people can get a deal done on a director's loan account, but you've got to do this before you appoint the insolvency practitioner. Remember when I said before that an insolvency practitioner is there to represent the other side? You can use this to your advantage, because most firms, they need your work. They do, the commercial businesses, and if they're not a massive firm that gets all the bank work, so the insolvency practitioner to a degree has to be commercial about this. So you can use this information I'm giving you now, or even better, pick the phone up to me and go through. As long as that insolvency practitioner returns a better return than he would if he made you bankrupt, you'll get a deal done. And the cost of making someone bankrupt is quite considerable. Petitioning creditors' costs, official receivers' costs, legal costs, trustee and bankruptcy costs. It could cost someone 50 grand to be made bankrupt. Now, let's say you've got a house that's got 200 grand equity in, you and your missus. Well, 100 grand of it's yours. And then there's 50 grand to get at your 100 grand. So there's 50 grand in the pot, and the insolvency practitioner hasn't even been paid yet. You might be able to get that settled for a lot less than you think you can. I have done loads of videos on overdrawn loan accounts on my YouTube channel. Please go and watch them. But that, if you do not put pen to paper on insolvency until you've cleared up your director's loan account. An insolvency practitioner can only do a deal with you in principle, right? Because they're relying on you telling the truth. If you tell them any porkies, or you stash assets, or when they open, look into things, you've got a villa in Marbella, you're in big trouble, right? You've got they're bloodhounds. They're taught to look for problems. So be honest, be transparent, and go and follow me, Chris Worden, Director First.
Chris, this has been so insightful. You kind of mentioned it there, but I'll just get you to repeat that. If people want more of your content, how do they find you on YouTube, LinkedIn, and beyond that? If they want to have a conversation, what's the best way to get in touch?
Go and watch my YouTube. It's Chris Worden at Director First. I'm on TikTok, Director First, or Chris Worden. Actually, I don't know about that. I'm on Instagram, c.worden, Facebook, Director First, LinkedIn, Chris Worden. My website is www.directorfirst.co.uk. And yeah, you'll find ways to get hold of me and my team there. We're everywhere. Yeah, go and check us out on Spotify as well.
Brilliant. Chris, thanks so much for your time.
Pleasure, mate. Thanks for having me.